My first experience with a Class 91 from Hornby was back in the early days of this channel, and I found that particular model to be such a poor runner that I never bothered to review it. It was really poor. Roll the clock forward to 2022 and Hornby finally delivered a Class 91 that was worthy of consideration. With some mixed reviews out there and a hefty price tag, this model has had its own challenges to deal with. After an extended review period, it's time to give Hornby's retooled and re-engineered Class 91 a closer look. Hi, thanks for joining today's review. We'll kick off with the usual unboxing, which will include a look under the bonnet as we look to add a DCC decoder. We'll then get into our usual close-up views running session before closing out with a summary, scoring and final recommendation. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, we're going to get into this unboxing for this Class 91, R3891, the Fusiliers, 91118. So let's get into it and see how this model fares, and is it worth that kind of asking price or something in that sort of ballpark if you're able to get it at a discount. I certainly don't think the full recommended retail price is reasonable for this, but that's we'll get that into the discussion at the end. So nice box, a nice photograph on the box, a little bit of history about the 91. So it's nice to have. Nice kind of mechanical drawing. Bit of weight in this. And I guess for the heavier locomotives, this packaging sometimes isn't always the best. I'll make a kind of determination, I guess, at the end whether it's that or not. A little bit of thing on here if you're just putting in a DCC decoder. Now, I had been hoping to run this with one of the TXS decoders, the HM7000 Bluetooth decoders, but they don't have a profile for the Class 91 yet. I'm not going to purchase the Locksound 91. I'm waiting to get it on the TXS decoders. So I'll probably be running this just with a basic 21-pin, function only decoder without sound. But I am disappointed about the lack of the profile being available. I'll talk about that in another video. So let's get this guy out of the box. It has some pretty good weight, as I said. So let's go and take a look. Pretty basic detailing kit and nameplates. There isn't a lot in there now. I guess a lot will be on the model. So let's just take them out. So good weight in the model. Certainly good weight. Got a good feel to it. It feels like a substantial model, I guess. And okay, that's not so nice. There's a nasty smudge on the model. So I think this is going to be a return. Can't do anything about that. Look at that. That's pretty horrible. Okay, that's unfortunate. This side is okay. Okay, that's a bad start. I mean, it does look like a reasonably good level of detail on this model, so that side of things is pretty okay. Those look like they are separate handrails, and the doors handles look nicely taken out there, and the glazing looks pretty good. And overall, the livery is fine, but that part of it obviously isn't for me. There's a basic enough internals there in the cab area with seating, so we can add a driver hopefully. Underbody detail is to a reasonable level. So this, I wouldn't say it's an excessively detailed model. It's to a good level of detail, and there's a good level of weight. It's got a good feel to it, and the vents and stuff there look like they're nicely done, and the nameplate actually is pretty good. What's on there is pretty good already. Now, I will do a close-up view, but obviously we do have that little bit of a defect at the front, but I will do a full close-up view on this so we can get a proper look at it. I think it's certainly going to warrant the close-up view. Let's just look at what we've got up here for the pantograph. Posable pantograph. Doesn't seem to be like the strongest in the world. But it does pose and it does hold its position, so it looks kind of separately painted on the top part there and the sides, so that's good. But it isn't the strongest in the world, so you don't want to be careful with that. Unfortunately, it won't have sound, so that's a pity. Okay, we've got the day-night running switch underneath there as well. Looks like we've got drive in both bogies, which you'd expect for a model like this. So yeah, let's move on. Just kind of disappointed to see that, but I kind of will need to kind of you can get that. I mean, you can get out of box issues like that, so that's not necessarily a total downer for the model, but it is it's just disappointing to get that. It's just, that's hard now. I'm surprised to see that. Okay, after considering my options on this, I finally made a decision that I was going to look to effect a repair myself. The dealer I purchased this from in the UK didn't cover the cost of postage, so sending this back was going to cost me a bit of money, and I was also going to lose a bit of time, probably 2 or 3 weeks, which as it turned out really wasn't significant because this review was delayed for quite a while. But at the time I did feel I wanted to get the review out of the way, so I did look to repair this myself. So it actually did clean up pretty easily, and I did have this particular paint lying around, this Vallejo paint, which is very good. It's an acrylic type paint for models, and I was looking to use this on another project. I did do a test on this and it was a pretty good color match. So we'll see that in the close-up review. We'll see what the end result looked like. It's a lot better than what we have here. It's not a 100% match. At certain angles you may notice it, but I think as you'll see in the running session and in the close-up reviews, it was pretty good, and I'm actually quite happy with it, and it saved me a lot of hassle in sending it back. I was surprised at this because usually there is a layer of lacquer over these that does protect any of the paintwork. Looks like it wasn't for this section, and that's why this got smudged like this. Kind of surprised at that. It is a quality issue, and I'll reflect that in the quality score. Otherwise, I was able to clean this up. You'll see it in the following sections of the review, and this was the paint I used, and it did a pretty good job. And this is a nice paint. It is good, and I would recommend it for other kind of silver metallic type work like this. There's a Humbrol equivalent which is nowhere near as good, so I was certainly well pleased with this. So that's the story. I didn't send it back. I've repaired this myself. So the model you see in the rest of this review is actually this model. It's not a new one. It's not a replacement. Just something, if you have similar damage like this to models like this that have this kind of silver finish, then this is quite a nice paint option for you. And I am considering using this paint on the roof of one of my Deltic Class 55s from Mercura scale, which originally had this silver finish. It isn't prototypical to have it, but I do like the look of it, and I may actually add it to one of those, and this would be the paint that I would use for that. So that's a story for another day. But okay, that's it. So the model you're going to see for the rest of the review is the one that got out of the box. Okay, we're going to take a quick look under the hood here for installing the DCC decoder. It's a 21-pin socket. You can see the TXS decoder here that we've just installed in that socket. Now there's very little space for a speaker. There really is only a little bit of space over the kind of main axle points there in the front and the rear. The very front and the rear areas are taken up by cab space. I'll kind of show that in the next picture. So you can't put anything in there. So you really are restricted to a very low profile speaker for this. You might be able to squeeze in something like an iPhone speaker, but you know that's going to be a challenge. But certainly none of the larger mega bass speakers or anything like that are going to fit in here. And the other thing to remember is this, I'm not showing a power pack here. This was before I put the power pack on. So you're going to have to fit that in there as well. So it's probably going to occupy the opposite side of the locomotive to where you have the speaker. So just showing you that, it is a challenge. Got another shot here, and you can kind of see the cab area at the front there. It takes up quite a lot of space, so it sits down over that area there. Now, just a point, I think I would have probably preferred to see the cab area be exposed when you took off the main cover and have it visible there, so that you could actually have the seats accessible and you could put your driver in very easily. Whereas now you've got to unclip that top cab area. There's nothing in the instructions as to how to do that, whether you might do some damage when you do that. Goes back to that whole theme of making it easy to add drivers, but that's for another day, I guess. So this is it. It's very limited in space. You're not going to fit a lot in here, and just need to take that into account when you look at the speaker options for this particular model. Okay, let's get on with the rest of the review. Okay, so here we are for our normal close-up view, and you can see the repair done there. It looks very, very good in this particular view. You'll kind of notice it in other views where there's a little bit of difference in the shading, but overall I was well pleased with it, so I'm pretty good with that. So you can see the kind of level of detail. The livery on this is good. It's well applied. Some nice detail on the roof. Those vents are actually quite nice, that little grille effect there. Bogies are relatively simple, but they're clean, crisp. There's some metal work there in that underbody piece. It's actually metal. The side label there, the Fusiliers, that nameplate, actually maybe doesn't come out as well here, but it does look good. And you can see the pantograph there, a little bit on the weak side. It's probably one of the weaker elements on this particular model, given it does have a pantograph and it's a model of this particular price range. And you can see the detail at the back. So we'll get into our 360 view next. So here is our 360 view. So we'll take a good look around the model here. Again, I think it's a nice looking model. I do like this livery, and I think it is the kind of definitive livery, I think, of the Class 91, certainly for me. Some people may like the Swallow, Intercity Swallow livery as another very popular livery for this. Again, you can see the work of the side. You can probably just see it's a little bit darker there, the part of the repair. You can see that at certain angles. But again, I am pretty happy with it overall, and it's a very minor. It's down to a very minor defect at this point, but it was a quality issue on the model from day one. So here you're getting a good view all the way around the model. I think it is a decent rendition of the Class 91. Certainly better than its predecessor would have to be. I don't think the predecessor was particularly good, and I guess it's going to come down now to things like the performance of this particular model on the track. This is a high-speed locomotive, so let's just see how she performs. Okay, so we're getting underway with the running session, and just for clarification, we are running with the TXS decoder. If you hear a bit of an engine sound, I have a Class 43 profile installed. The sound is turned down, so you're not really going to hear it that much. You're going to hear more just the sound of the coaches, etc. on the track rather than the actual engine sound. As I said, I do not have a proper sound profile installed here, but it is running under Bluetooth control with the TXS decoder, and I do like running a lot of these trains using that configuration. It's a very, very nice way to run your train. So we're going to pick up speed reasonably quickly. This is a very fast locomotive, so I have tested the locomotive on its own up to its 100% power level and speed, and we'll talk about that at the end. I'm not going to run a rake of 10 coaches at that speed. I don't have the courage to do that for fear of what might happen. So we were not going to go near that speed. I'll probably try to get this up to about 70% power in the course of the running session, which at least give you a feel for what it looks like and how it performs. It's smooth, maybe not as smooth as something like an Acura scale Class 37 or something like that, but it is smooth, and its low speed performance is good, and its high speed performance is really good, and it can achieve the kind of speeds that you would expect from this class of locomotive. Pulling power is good as well. These coaches have a higher drag factor than the Mark III coaches, and you've got the drag factor of the DVT as well at the end. So this is quite a load. This is quite a heavy load on a locomotive. Now I have changed out the couplers. I'm using magnetic couplers throughout, and I'll talk about that later on. And I think I do like the close coupling now. You can see that between the Mark IV coaches. I needed a slightly different coupler between the lead coach and the locomotive because they were just that bit too close and they were hitting off each other. So I've used a slightly longer magnetic coupler there. Overall, you can see this is a very realistic looking train now because you've got really tight close coupling between them. You don't get the couplers out of the box. Unfortunately, you have to purchase them separately. And again, not like the new Mark IIIs where you do get them. But it does give you a very nice effect on the train, and you can see it there. It does look really good. So we're picking up speed here. We're getting up close to our maximum speed. As I said, I really wasn't going to run this up at that top speed. I might try to do that separately again, but this locomotive does go really fast at 100%, so I was kind of reluctant to do that. So let's keep it going now. We'll crank up the speed a bit more. And okay, we have a problem. Okay, so we've got a locomotive that's broken away from the carriages, and that's down to me actually putting on too much acceleration. So let's try again. Okay. So what happened there is I actually cranked up the speed very quickly. With the inertia of the coaches, the locomotive broke away. You can run this a little bit faster than I've just done there. I'm going to slow her down now and we'll finish the running session. But I suppose that's just a lesson that if you are running magnetic couplers like this with a very heavy load as this is, and you are running at these kind of speeds, and this is a very fast locomotive, and I've tuned it so right now it will accelerate quite quickly. I use that during the running session so that I can crank up the speed pretty quickly. And I just cranked it up too fast, and it was such that the inertia of the coaches just meant there was a breakaway, and we had that. So with magnetic couplers, there's always a risk of that, and I guess you just want to make sure that you don't end up with a calamity on your layout when that happens. But you saw the low speed performance at the end there, a really good running session, and this is actually a good runner. Okay, let's get into the summary. So we've been looking at the R3891 as Hornby Class 91, 91118 in the LNER livery with the name of the Fusiliers. It's one of the 2022 liveries, and a lot of these 2022 liveries are still around. So you may be able to pick one of them up, and you can pick this particular one up. I think it might be a little bit harder to get the Intercity Swallow livery version. I think that's probably sold out in most places. You'll get the GNER livery, which you see next. And there's also the LNER Flying Scotsman livery, which these are the two new liveries for 2023. Comes with a 5-pole skew-on motor, which is powerful and fast. It's got all-wheel drive and all-wheel pickup, and it runs on minimum radius 2 curves, and I didn't find any issues on radius 2 curves. It's got a kinematic coupling mechanism with NEM pockets with tension lock couplers pre-fitted. It does not come with magnetic couplers, so you've got to get those yourself. It's 21-pin DCC ready. There is no TXS sound profile, unfortunately, but hopefully that will come. And it is quite tight, as you saw. There is limited space internally for a speaker, so you're going to have to fit something that's just going to be accommodated. You're not going to be able to fit anything significantly large in this particular model. It's got directional and cab lighting with a day-night option, and you can turn off the rear lights as well. And I was able to do that under the TXS control. Top scale speed I got with this was 170 miles per hour scale speed at 100% power, and drawing 240 milliamp peak current, and that was just the locomotive only. Now that is a fast speed on your layout. I didn't run with the full rake at that speed. I may attempt to maybe get to 80-90%. That's a very fast speed to be running a high resistance rake. If these were Mark III coaches, for example, which are much smoother running, I might be happier to get to that sort of speed, but I'm not 100% confident with the Mark IV coaches. So it is fast, it runs up to its prototypical speed and beyond, which is good, and it is more than capable of pulling the rake. That is a high resistance rake. The unboxed weight, 536 grams, and I guess that makes it quite a weighty locomotive, kind of equivalent of a Class 43 HST. To be honest, it's kind of that sort of ballpark of weight, and obviously it runs slightly faster than those particular models. The selling price can vary quite a bit, so the highest selling price for this, which would be on the 2023 models, would be $23.99. And you'll get it discounted down to $159.99. And I think I have seen a recent discount actually go down as far as $149.99, which starts to become pretty good value at that level. At the RRP level, it's a crazy price. And even at the typical discounted level of, typically 10% discount you might see on these, it's still too high. And we'll talk about that in the scoring. Okay, and those prices are as of November 2023. So let's get into the scoring. So the running performance, I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. And the main reason it's not a 10 out of 10 is it is just that little bit harsher, if I use that term. It's not this. It doesn't have quite the smooth, the kind of velvety smooth performance of the best Bachmann and Acura scale locomotives. And it also has an issue out of the box because it doesn't have a power pack on it. And in reverse, I did find it stalling over InsuFrog express points at low speed. Only happened a couple of times, but it did happen, and you do need to run this with a power pack, basically. You'll have to add that to it. So that's mainly the reason on the performance, but it is very fast. It's one of the fastest locomotives I've ever tested, and its low speed performance still is very good in general, and it can pull, as I say, a high resistance rake, 10 coaches plus DVT. That's pretty good. This is a good performer in general. No real issues on that front. Appearance and detail, a couple of things here. I think the pantograph is lacking in terms of just from an appearance and also a functional perspective, which is on the extras and variants. It is missing an electronic pantograph, basically, a metal one, which would look more realistic and also give you the effect of being able to raise and lower it using a separate motor. Something that you'd get on a Bachmann Class 90, for example, or an Acuroscale 92. So interesting that those two models kind of bracketed. Both of those have that capability. This doesn't, and hence it does fall behind those in that regard. I did think the livery was pretty good on this. I was pretty happy with that in general. So it's not a bad appearance overall, but as I say, probably missing in a couple of areas, but overall a pretty good looking model. Now, I did have a quality issue, and I reflect that in the build quality a little bit later on. Extras and variants, there are a number of different variants of this between 2022 and 2023, which is good. Extras are pretty thin on the ground, so the detailing kit is pretty tiny. You don't get magnetic couplers or anything like that with it. You don't get those sort of options. And I say you don't have an electronic pantograph. So it is missing some of these things that you would expect, I suppose, for a model of this price range. There's no fitted driver either, so I might as well throw that one in. So it is missing a few things that you'd expect for a high price or premium price locomotive that it is. Build quality, again, a couple of things here. The pantograph, as I said, isn't the best in the world, even as it is. Even if it wasn't electronic, it still is a relatively cheap looking pantograph, unfortunately, even with the little bit of extra painting detail on it. I did have that issue with the paint, which was unfortunate, and that particular front silver band looks like it's going to be vulnerable to that type of issue. So you better be careful if you're touching the front of the model, that you could actually see that run into a similar problem to what I had out of the box. So that's a quality issue. The other main gripe on the quality side, and it is difficult to get the cover off, and that's because the location of the screws underneath the bogies, and they are challenging to get at. You can't physically see them because they're so deep and buried when you're actually taking them out. You're going to need a magnetic screwdriver, and you're going to need the right head of screwdriver to get them out. And it was just fiddly. It really was. That's just an added complication on this particular model. You do have to open it if you're going to add DCC, for example, or if you're going to add a driver. And again, access to the driver area, again, is even that bit tougher again. So you've got to go and remove the front kind of cab area where the driver is residing. And again, that's not straightforward. It isn't documented in the documentation. This is an issue with models like this, unfortunately. But particularly the location of the screws to remove the body are particularly bad. It's one of the worst models I have in terms of the location of those screw holes. It really is. So I'm reflecting that in this score as well. The packaging and documentation, again, it's very thin, both the packaging and the documentation, for, again, a model of this caliber. If you were to compare the packaging on this compared to a Dapol or an Acuroscale model, for a model of this price, it's not good. It doesn't compare well. Now, is it reasonably adequate? It reasonably is, but it could be better. So I think 8.5 is maybe even a generous score in that regard. Now, price value. It's not good at all. And this is at the 196 level, which is a crazy price for a DCC ready model, no motorized pantograph, with a reasonable level of detail, but nothing exceptional. And with, a lighting package, which is kind of a standard, nothing exceptional either. It's not good. That's a very expensive price, and the recommended retail price is a crazy price. It's a 3. And I've kind of worked through a table here which kind of shows the different prices as I would view them and the score I would give against the different prices. So I paid the 176 sort of level, and which comes out at about a 5 in terms of the score. If you get down to the 149 type level, well, now you're looking at a good value for this particular model. That's the sort of price it should be at for what it is, and it's just overpriced. I'm sorry. So it's a 3. So overall, it's a 7.5, but if you take the price piece out of it, you see it's an 84, which says it's a good model. It's a good model in general, but it is overpriced, and you need to buy this discounted, to be honest. Obviously, anybody buying this pre-ordered, you're going to be paying the full price for it, and the coaches as well. And if you add up if you were paying full price on coaches, full price on the Locomotive, and then adding sound, if you were adding, a ESU decoder for sound, 120, 125 pounds as well, you're nearly talking at the full train price, including the DVT, of, 900 pounds. It's crazy money. So that's the main thing here. Good model, overpriced, get it at a discount if you can. Understand it has some limitations, but not too many. And overall, I think it is a decent model. An 8.4 is a good score, and it is a good runner. Having had this model for a much longer period than I normally would before reviewing it, I think it's safe to say that I'm familiar now with any quirks or bad habits that you might not notice on a first viewing. This is a decent model, and its running performance, while not as smooth and refined as the leading Acuroscale and Bachmann locomotives, is still very good, and this is both a fast and powerful locomotive. The quality glitch I had aside, this is visually a good model as well, with the pantograph probably being the biggest area of weakness. The lack of a TXS sound profile is a disappointment, as I really enjoyed running this model under Bluetooth control, as I did for my recent Class 43 review. For the price I paid for the Locomotive and coaches, I'm reasonably happy on the value front, but I am glad that I have one of these models now, as it could be a while before we see another rerun of this class. If you're modelling passenger trains in this era, then one of these locomotives is probably a no-brainer, and it's more a question of the livery option to go for. I chose the basic LNER livery, as I believe it will give me the most flexibility in terms of use. Hornby's Class 91 is not a perfect model, but at the right price I am pleased with it, and I would recommend it. Similar to the Class 43, it has a real kick at higher speeds, and can be quite thrilling to run this close to its prototypical top speed. Mark IV coaches are not as smooth and refined as their Mark III counterparts, and the added running resistance did lead to the magnetic coupler of the first car breaking loose during the running session. Some of this was operator error on my part, but it was an indicator of the relative load versus a Mark III rake. With a smaller rake or confining yourself to lower speeds, this won't be a problem for you. Intercity 225 fans will probably already have invested at this stage, but if you've been sitting on the fence, I would advise at checking out bargains that are out there, both on the Locomotive and the coaches, as well as the driving trailer, particularly the Transport for Wales versions. In this latter configuration, you can get away with a 5-car train with a mix of liveries. The Transfer for Wales Mark IV DVT is currently selling for £50, for example, from some retailers, with some of the coaches in the mid-20s. Coupled with a discounted Locomotive, there's an opportunity here to have a relatively low-cost, high-speed train configuration on your layout. So what has your experience been with this reincarnation of the Class 91 from Hornby? In particular, what would be the areas you would like to see improved in any future release of this model? Please let us know in the comments. So thanks for joining today's video. Please drop a like if you found it of use, and we'll hopefully see you on the next one. In the meantime, take care and happy modelling.